For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliott Apollo's, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
All right, and welcome in this morning. Hope you have your coffee because we have a very special guest today. We'll introduce him here in a second, but I want to check in with Brian as always. How's it going today, Brian? How are you this morning?
Doing great, Matt. Doing awesome. It's a Saturday morning. It's championship weekend for us that love both Buffalo teams. Very exciting time. So, and looking forward to diving into our Sabres and talking here with our special guest. And how can we fix this mess, right? How can we fix this?
This is kind of the time that we both take off from our normal, podcast stuff and kind of get to talk about, a team that, not that we don't love the Bills or anything like that. Huge fans, but that's kind of what we talk about on a daily basis. So I at this point, I do want to welcome up Chad DeDominicis. Thank you so much again for joining us here. Chad, welcome in.
Not a problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chad.
Absolutely. And to start out, I don't want to start out too hard, but I'll, fix the team for us. No, I'm only kidding. No, we talked last time, and last time we were still in, we were in a wild card spot the last time, all three of us talked, and I know it was only about like 20 or so games into the season, but they went on a let's say lackluster losing streak after we had John, and unfortunately they dropped down, and now they're in last place in the conference, pretty close to last place in the NHL, and it's unfortunately, I mean, what have you seen that really has kind of led to that downfall?
Oh man, a lot of things. And at the same time, not many things different than what we talked about last time we spoke. Consistency is the thing for the entire team. Offense, defense, goaltending, coaching, power play, penalty kill. It never gets on the same page at any point. It's very inconsistent, and if it does get on the same page, it's for a game. And then it's, blowing leads, scoring first, almost every game, and still losing those games, 1-goal, 2-goal leads. Some cases in losing streak, 3-goal leads, 4-goal leads, and you still lose those and don't even get a point out of those. It's the makeup of just a team that isn't capable of stringing together wins. Some of what they're going through can be tied to some bad luck. There's some injuries in it. But a lot of it overall, it's just a team that, as constructed, isn't good enough. And the standings represent that. I think last time we talked 20 games, I said, it's kind of when I start to really think things are real and start to believe in things. And now we're 48 games in, and this is who you are. There's really not enough runway to make any kind of crazy runs. Where you are in the standings is pretty much where you're going to hang out. Up or down a few slots for sure. It's possible, but it's not going to drastically change.
Yeah, I mean, at this point right now, I've never been a big fan of the word tank or tanking, but I mean, you're already at this spot with what you have. I mean, do you try and finish the season on a high note since the team's not really most likely isn't going to change much going into next year? Maybe some new assistants or maybe Kevin Adams gets fired. I don't know. I just don't see Terry Pegula firing Lindy Ruff for a second time. When who knows? But do you see more that they kind of try and finish on a high note for the season, or do you expect them to kind of sell everything and kind of go for the gusto and try and get a high draft pick again?
I think we'll end up seeing a little bit of both. I don't think we're going to see like a fire sale here by any means. I think there's some guys whose contracts are expiring. Jordan Greenway, once he gets healthy, I can see him being moved. Maybe Yoki Haru if there's somebody who will take him. Connor Clifton, I think, only has 1 year left. Maybe someone takes him. He's the guy you throw out there. If they want to make a big trade, then there's some big guys they could look at. There's some guys on expiring RFA contracts. Do they want to move on to Jack Quinn? That's something they could look at. And then Zucker is going to be interesting. So he's a free agent when the season is over, but I think their desire is to keep him, but it's his desire to stay here. So we'll see how that plays out. So I don't think they're going to find any start. Can't do a full. It doesn't work there anymore. I think the thing they have to figure out first is.
Chad, we're having a little bit of issue with your mic, real quick. If you,
Yeah.
it's just it completely like cut off.
Cut off. Can you hear me better?
Yes, much
That's
better.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's much
All
better.
right. Sorry about that. I think I leaned back and lost it. So I was saying they have to figure out what to do with the general manager, right? If he's going to stay, then I think that sets up what you're going to do moving forward. And he can start acting on those plans. Now, if he's going to go, then it's kind of, what do you really want to let him do? What do you want to let him change? And then it gets into, like you said, Lindy Ruff too. I'm of the belief that if Kevin Adams goes, that Lindy Ruff will go too. Maybe not a firing, but okay, I'm done. This isn't for me anymore, and I'm going to bail in the last year. Because really, you got to remember, he only has a 2-year contract. So if you're bringing in a new general manager, whether it would be Jason Carmano's promotion or somebody else from the outside, they're probably not going to want to have a coach that only has 1 year left on his deal and is looking at this as a short-term thing. So if Adam goes, I would believe that Ruff probably goes too. Again, I don't know if it's firing or more of a just, hey, let's all go our separate ways here, didn't work kind of thing. But we'll see. I mean, that's something that we'll figure out come April. But yeah, I don't think it'll be a full teardown. I just think they'll try to tinker with it again.
I just don't think that they can. I just don't think that they can allow Kevin Adams to go into the trade deadline and make these potential huge moves. Whether there is a huge move or not, or whether it's to get rid of like a Dylan Cousins or a Jason Zucker or any. I don't think that he can be involved in that if they're going to let him go next year. So the next month will probably be a little bit telling as to what is going to, like, if they get to the break for the I can never remember what it's called, but the
Four Nations,
the Four Nation thing, and that break that they have, the freeze on the 8th. If they get to that point and Kevin Adams is fired over those couple of weeks, then I can definitely see Lindy Ruff maybe being done at the end of the season. But if they let Kevin Adams go into the trade deadline and make, I really am of the mind that he's probably here next year at least.
I'll tell you what, guys. Matt, I'm going to disagree with you. I think Kevin Adams is going over this break. I just feel it. I just wonder if Pagula is just so wrapped up in the Bills right now, and maybe after that's over, he turns his attention. But Chad, I want to get your opinion on this too. I mean, I think this is a very attractive job. If Terry Pagula wants to dip in and get the right general manager with experience, I got to believe that general manager's out there saying, I got a lot of prospects here. I got a pretty clean cap for the most part. That person can orchestrate and do a lot of things with this roster. I mean, I got to believe it. I know the outside people say, oh, Buffalo's a terrible job. But I don't agree. I think if you get that general manager who really has that savvy experience, and I think it's an attractive position.
So you're probably not going to like my answer, but I'm going to slightly disagree with you.
Okay.
I think it's not the most attractive job. And the reason is for the guy that you mentioned, the owner. So I think the things that we sometimes hear about his over involvement, and he's involved in a lot, it's a little over exaggerated. Don't get me wrong, he's in meetings, he's very in tune with what is going on. So, and then the other side of it, the people say he doesn't really care, and that's not entirely true either. Right? It's in the middle on both sides of it. So he knows what's going on. He's in tune in the meetings, but he's also not sitting there going, "Hey, go get this guy. Hey, go get that guy. I want this guy. I want that guy. I want you to draft this guy. I want you to draft that guy. Do this, do this, do that, do this." That's not happening. Where I think he is making the most influence is from a financial standpoint. And that, I think, is what will make this job not as appealing as the things you listed off are true and valid. It should make it appealing in that regard.
Yeah.
But I think the financial aspect of it restricts that. And other general managers, agents, they know. They know there's... I've been hammering away this internal cap that I think exists that I can't get anybody in the world to confirm, but I mean the evidence mounts every single day. That cap space has sat there the entire season, not been used. It's not going to be used, and it has only grown from the beginning of the season. And then we look at the past history of their spending. They're one of the lowest spending teams in the league over the last 3 years, down with like the Ducks. I mean, the Ducks are the lowest. So if you're a general manager candidate coming in here looking at this, where I have $35 million in cap space, but what can I use? I got to use 20. Well, then that's not as appealing. I got to re-sign some guys. I got to do some things. That's what makes it difficult and not as appealing. Especially then again, if you have an owner breathing over your neck, where you kind of got to approve a lot of things by him. Like let's say Elias Pettersson, for example. Like Kevin Adams can't just go out and do that. There's bonus structure. There's all of that it has to go through Terry and get Terry's approval. And then, that's, again, the financial ramifications, I think, really impact that. And then that's not even getting to the front office aspect of it. The Sabres have one of the smaller front offices in the league. Well, that's another part of it, too.
Well, and I think that kind of brings to the point why a lot of people don't think that Terry Pegula, or that it comes across as he doesn't care. Right, because like you see what he does with the Bills. Basically gives Brandon Beane carte blanche to do whatever he can go out and sign somebody, give him $100 million bonus. Over basically the Von Miller contract. They can give them over a 6-year deal, $120 million, and all of it was basically front loaded in the first 3 years. They want to see him do that with the Sabres, but Brian and I had talked about this a couple of times. It's a lot different in the NHL. And I'm not saying you're wrong, because I truly do think there's some sort of a internal salary cap since COVID. Whether they get some of that money back, or it comes out of their pocket, goes into their pocket, whatever. I'm not that much up on the cap anymore in hockey, but like I am in football. But it really, to me, Brian and I had said this multiple times, is the cap in the NHL is so much harder to circumvent like it is in the NFL. Like in the NFL, you have not likely to be earned incentives, which don't hit, and you can put, like, if a player doesn't, he hit 12 sacks, and you think you put a thing in there if he gets to 17 sacks, that that doesn't actually hit your cap until, so you can kind of inflate what contracts look like. In the NHL, you really can't do that. You're getting paid this amount of money this year. If we're paying you $14 million this year and $2 million next year, that's still an $8 million cap hit. So there's really not much maneuvering that can be done as far as hiding cap money, unless you're going to use the Tampa Bay or Las Vegas model, where you bring in as many players as you can and only have them play one game at the end of the year to be eligible to play in the playoffs.
But teams jump around it. There's ways to get around. But you have to be willing to spend the money. Like, you have to be willing to pay, because really, like you said, in the NHL, if you put a guy on long-term injury reserve, you still have to pay him. So the cash still has to be paid out. So I think that's the part of it too. Like I think is what you're getting to, is like with the contracts in the NFL, there's bonus base, and you can kind of jump around. With the NHL, they're fully guaranteed contracts. They are what they are. You're paying that out. And that's why, the Skinner thing is, a lot of people are like, oh, he did that to provide cap space. But he saved himself some money. He now has to pay Jeff Skinner less money. He has to pay it over a longer period, but it's still less money. I think it was like $5 or $6 million. He saves himself in actual cash.
Yeah, and most of that money probably went to Don Granato.
It went to hiring Nick Druff. Yeah. To be honest, win. The cash went. And it's a very, again, I don't know, no one told me this, But you could easily get to the conclusion that they bought out Jeff Skinner to use his savings in cash to go pay Lindy Ruff to be their head coach. Because they're still paying Granato. I think he has 1 year left on his contract still. They're still paying him.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I mean,
and listen,
I go ahead, Brian.
No, as you know, as much as we think Terry Pegula, he's a fan, he wants to win. Listen, there are 2,781 billionaires in the world. They don't get there by accident, right? So, I mean, we can say what we want about I mean, we're talking Terry Pegula's in a very, very small, exclusive club, and you don't get there by accident. So, and the NHL, as we know, is dependent on gate revenue more than any of the big four sports. So, if the fans aren't coming, so I guess for the next GM, Chad, I mean, we need someone, I guess, then maybe not a guy with experience that's used to spending money, maybe someone from Toronto or New York or whatever that's used to saying, oh, I got a limited budget. But we need some kind of architect, like someone that can really get in and get creative with trades or maybe fill in the gaps on this team. I mean, do you think, that whole thing, that the answers in the room, we kind of made fun of that whole thing. Do you think if we filled in the gaps maybe with, like, for example, the Rangers picked up Kaliev, right? I was going crazy about that. I figured that was just a nice move. Just show the team something that you, right? Kaliev, and I have buddies that are Ranger fans. They're like, oh, he gets in front of the net and he's doing some things. And I said to myself, wow, wouldn't that be nice on the Sabres? I mean, those are things that we're looking for from this team, right? But do you think if we maybe got a better third pairing defenseman, or maybe we could just find one good top six forward, maybe get creative, it could just push some of our players around in better spots, and maybe they could send somebody down to get better development and things like that. Because I think that's the Sabres' problem. They have players, but they're not developing certain players in the right positions, and they just need some adjustments. At least get us to a playoff, a team that can make the wild card, right? And then if we do that, the fans will start coming back, and then we could Terry would start spending more money and do that. Because do you think that's probably the best way to go at this point?
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on one of the things I think frustrates me a little bit that you see out there is that they're rushing guys in their development, which I don't think that's, besides Devin Levi. I think the Devin Levi thing still to this day is bananas how they're handling that. They keep shoving them in there, but whatever, that's neither here or there. But overall, I think they're not rushing guys. And if you think back, Jack Quinn was ready to come up. JJ Peterka was ready to come up. Kulik is ready to come up. Benson earned his spot. There's no what. He should be in junior still. I mean, he's one of their best players right now. Power's the first overall pick. He went back to college for a year. Like, all those guys you think about that came up, like they should have been here. The problem is that they were shoved into roles that they probably weren't ready for. Power immediately to come here and be a top four defenseman. Cousins is a second line center all of a sudden. Jack Quinn, top six forward. Peterka, top six forward, like right away at 21, 22 years old. And, I told people that I think the year they missed by a point really set this franchise back because of the false belief they got that these young players were ready for these roles. And they weren't. And we're seeing that. We're still seeing that unfold. And now you're at the point with like Dylan Cousins, we're like, man, you might have to move on there. It's not happening. It's not clicking. It's getting worse. It's going backwards. You've probably ruined that, and you got to try to recoup value. Jack Quinn, the same thing. Peterka, I have more faith in kind of rebounding here. He has some decent underlying stuff when you look at who he plays with. So that's fine. Power took a step back this year, but that's common for defensemen. But overall, I think the overall point is the need was to get – you needed more Jason Zucker. You got one. Mm-hmm. You probably needed two more. And that's why a lot of us, including myself, sat there in August, September, and pointed at the $7-8 million and being like, hey, man, like, you could use that to add somebody else. And their thought was, well, if we need it, we'll use it early in the season. If we need to go get somebody, we'll go get somebody. Oh, that was hard. No way. You didn't think that was possible in the NHL, where nobody really makes trades until December or January. Well, you thought that'd be different.
Yeah, I mean, let's touch on that real quickly before we get off the Sabres here a little bit. Last night in the NHL, huge trade. You guys considered a blockbuster. I don't know what to consider at this point right now, but Mika Rantanen and Taylor Hall went to Carolina. Is that correct?
Yep.
So, I mean, that's for them to be able to put that together. And, it kind of, I was joking around with Brian last night when I told him about it. And I was just like, I was just like, well, he left us, but no big deal. But when it comes down to it, like, how are they able to put something like that together and add three, basically go through three teams to do this, and then the Sabres can't do anything?
Well, I think there's a few things that go into it. One, these are two franchises that are consistently in the playoffs, and one is the Stanley Cup ring in the last 3 or 4 years. So that, that makes it easy when you're in that position. You also have the flexibility to make these moves when you've established credibility as a winning franchise, that you can toss Mika Rantanen out the door and nobody goes, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" It makes sense, and there's logic behind it. You can see it. You understand in a winning franchise that why they did what they did. There's also the trade protection. Everybody in the league, it seems, has a no-move clause or trade protection of some kind now, and it's kind of got a little bit out of control. But that makes it more difficult, like it or not. Getting guys to waive to come here, to agree to come here, is a difficult thing. And that's, they put themselves in that spot. It's not really necessarily the palm trees, where, weather is part of it, don't get me wrong. But it's also, they haven't won, and they haven't made the playoffs going on 14 years. Like that matters. That's the bigger thing that they have to do, and that's what makes it difficult. So that's why when you see, big names and you look for trade ideas and you see there's no trade protection, you're like, oh, okay. That should be somebody you're targeting. Elias Pettersson, perfect example. No trade protection right now. He has no say, realistically, in where he would be traded to if Vancouver moves him. Now, the Canucks could do the right thing and talk to him, hey, you want to go here? Do you want to go there? This, if they wanted to. I don't know if they would, or if they do want to, they might just take the best deal, and it is what it is, and Pettersson deals with it. But when those guys become available, they have to really look into those things. But then, Pettersson, we get into the financial part we just talked about. Like, you can see it, like, it's a circle. It's a ring around. You just go round and round and round. The various things that, is what makes it difficult. And again, it gets back to looking from a general manager standpoint. Is this an attractive job? If you can't get anybody to agree to come here, you want to work for that team? Like, I can't make any trades. Players don't want to come here. It makes my life difficult. Like, so it's, and I'm not trying to give Kevin Adams excuses. It's 5-6 years he's been here. This is the job, man. This is the situation. This is the job. If you cannot execute it, then somebody else needs to be given an opportunity. That's plain and simple the way it is. But at the same time, you have to be real about it, and it's not easy to pull these off. In general, in the NHL, it's not easy to pull off a trade. But when you're dealing with the limitations of a financial, of trade protection, the various things, it makes it more difficult.
I always said the way Kevin Adams made that comment, Chad, was the worst part, right? If he would have said, about the palm trees and taxes, it was just the tone and the way he said it. If he would have said, hey, we understand, there are limitations, like you said, no movement clauses make things difficult. And yeah, we don't have the greatest weather and our tax situation isn't the best, but we are trying to make things happen here. If he says that, nobody's really getting on Kevin Adams as much as they are. I think that was the
first part of that quote, to give him, again, I always bring it up, the first part of that quote, to be fair, he did say that they have to start winning games.
True.
That's
that is true.
The palm trees and everything else, but yes. But I always say the palm tree thing for me, it's that he can't tell you that he's working with limitations. He can't tell you. If he tells you that the owner won't let him spend money, he won't have a job anymore. He has the job he has because he protects the owner. That's why he's in the role that he's in. That's why somebody else isn't there. That's why he was hired, because he takes the bullets for the owner. If he throws the owner under the bus, then he's going out the door, and he knows that. And he cannot say that. So he's grasping. Think of like you're trying to make up excuses, and you're on the spot. You're like, the palm trees and taxes. And like, it's not really the truth, but you're grasping for something to give an answer.
And that kind of goes back to the whole, that whole press conference really made me think too, just kind of reading between the lines, that with that, him going out there taking the bullets for Terry and everything, I really do think that, they have him in a much higher regard for the job that he's doing than what, just because he does go out there and protect the owner, he does go out there, he's what, 6 years in, 5-6 years in, and the closest you were to having a winning team was 1 point away from a playoff spot. Like, at some point, the fans are just going to go away. We're losing an entire generation of fans as Sabres people, or as Sabres fans. You're going to have a 10-year gap in Sabres fans, unless you have somebody like myself or Brian or even Chad yourself, and if you had kids or nieces or nephews, or and you're trying to get them involved and give them but they're gonna lose interest too. Like, they're gonna lose interest even if you're still pushing it on them and everything else. They're gonna lose interest too, because this team sucks right now, and it sucked for the last 14 years. And I hate saying it, but like, if it wasn't for having to do this podcast once a week, I wouldn't watch Sabres games.
I get it, man. I get it. In the silver lining, I think that, with building Sabres fans and kids is, I think the Sabres should really lean, and to their credit, they've started to. They're doing it with the arena upgrades and scoreboard, as much to make fun of it. And some of like the in-game stuff they're doing. A kid getting into hockey, they don't, my kids, the friends I go with and their kids, they don't know the Sabres are in last place. They don't care. And I think what you have to do is you have to put together a fun product. We're sure the three of us, were like, man, this team is terrible again. Yeah. My 9-year-old doesn't know that. He doesn't know they've missed the playoffs for 13 years. Like, oh, we're going to go see the Sabres. Where's Sabretooth? Oh, cool, black jerseys, goal horn, fun. That's kind of how you get people in. And then hopefully by the time they realize standings and playoffs and like you're good again. But I think that's what they have to lean into here as they try to fix the on-ice product, is they have to improve and continue to improve on their in-arena experience to, keep those kids, keep those fans. It's like, my kid asks all the time if he can go to the games. I have friends and their kids, they want to go to games all the time. And, I'm not going to be like, I don't know, man, like they're losing 13 in a row. Are you sure? Like, yeah, doesn't care. So I think it's that thing is you kind of have to like separate between like the adult and being a kid is what they really care about. So if they keep fixing that in-arena experience, I think it'll allow them to hold on for a few more years while they try to fix the on-ice product. So hopefully be something good.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from, and and that's kind of what I was saying is, like, as you take them to a game and they're enjoying other things within the arena, but when they start catching on to the fact that, oh, the on-ice product is horrible, like, right. I'm losing a game, and I had fun, but I'm watching the game now, and that's when they're starting. That's more what I meant, is that's when they start to lose fans.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have more kids come up and pick other teams in the area. They're gonna gravitate to a player, and they're gonna be a fan of that team, and that's
right. Exactly. And so I mean, we already touched on Elias Pettersson a little bit. What other moves? Or, well, let's start with this. What would a trade package for him have to look like from the Sabres?
A lot. I mean, you're probably including Cousins or one of those. Probably Cousins. I don't know who else they really would be. I don't think Jack Quinn is going to interest them that much. So probably Cousins is a part of it if they're interested in him as a center replacement. And then it probably is one of Byram or Power. The reports out of Vancouver is they're very high on Byram, and the Sabres are pretty reluctant to include Power in any sort of trade conversation now, which I understand. I get that. So it's probably Byram and Cousins in theory, and you probably need to get something else. Draft pick, one of your high-end prospects, throw them in there too.
So, I mean, that would be something like if it was Dylan Cousins, Bowen Byram, and even 2 firsts. As long as this year's a protected first, I'm fine with it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So Chad, would you make that? Like, if you were running the Sabres, I had GM, would you make that kind of trade? Would you even extend it a little bit more if you had to, considering the Sabres pool, looking at their prospect pool and maybe what's coming up in the 25 draft? would you do that? Would you go get an Ellis Pettersson at this point? Do you think that's something that could give this franchise that shot in the arm that we need?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think he's an excellent player. So I would definitely. There's not much that I wouldn't give up for him. I'll say that. The other part of it, though, that I think some people forget about, or maybe even don't know, is he has that knee issue. So that's the thing. When you're paying a guy, what is it, $11 million, $10 million over the next 7-ish years.
Actually, 11.6. I mean, that's quite a hefty salary. For
7.6 over the next 7 years. And remember, it's fully guaranteed contracts. That knee thing is something to consider. I would still do it. You take the risk, you take the gamble, and you hope that that's fine and not a thing. But it's something that's out there among NHL teams that they're considering, with him being out there. It's not maybe as clean as it looks, just go trade for Pettersson. So I think that's something also I think that Vancouver is kicking around too when they're deciding between Miller or Pettersson, which one they're going to move. That knee injury plays a factor. But I would go get him. Changes the direction of your franchise, injects some life, brings you to relevancy, if nothing else. It brings you back to NHL relevancy. People talk about your team. You're not just a laughing stock anymore. But I think all of those things, check. I've said from the beginning, if they really wanted to do it, if the owner will sign off on it, it is not a trade that they should lose. They have all of the assets to go do it if they really want to.
So, let me ask you this too, because I don't remember if it was yourself or if it was somebody else, but I know that I know somebody said that we were in on Kako.
Yes,
Kako.
They were.
What else would have had to been done to get him in a Sabres jersey?
So the Rangers wanted a right shot defenseman in particular. The Sabres do not have many of those. I don't really want to say the part that they offer, so I don't get in trouble. But I think if you start to put 2 and 2 together, you can pretty clearly get to the right shot defenseman that they threw on the table to offer them. And the Rangers really liked Will Borgen, and that's what they did. There's. You could say, add draft picks and add this and add that. The Rangers don't care about draft picks. They're trying to fix their team, their aging team. They don't want futures. They want somebody who's going to help them right now. They wanted a right shot defenseman, and you offered what realistically the best that you could, I guess. And probably is your best right shot defenseman. Maybe not. I don't know. Again, it's all you have. You threw it out there. They liked another guy better, and they went with that offer. That's one of those situations where you can't really do much about it. That's what they want. That's what they targeted, and that's where they went. But yeah, they tried. They were in there to the very end with it. But Seattle, he went in. It's unfortunate because he's doing really well there.
Yeah, always a bridesmaid, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead, Brian.
No, Chad, I had a question about a player on our team because I want to ask you, because you look at the analytics side, you forget more about that than I know at this point. Is Dylan Cousins fixable at this point, number one? And number two, do you think if we got him a center and we moved him to wing, do you see anything there that might suggest that he could do something at this point? Or I'm lost with Dylan Cousins. I'm shocked with his regression, to be honest. When we first saw him come on this team, I envisioned maybe a future captain. He had that look about him. He was fighting against the Rangers. He's had that big fight. He had that kind of grit. Do you think he's salvageable at this point, or do you think he just
one of his first games, he shut down Connor McDavid.
He was, okay, we got something here, but what would I'm lost with him, so I just wanted to get your opinion on Dylan Cousins.
It's funny when he first came up and he was getting into these fights. I was one of the few people where it was like, that's cool, but you shouldn't be doing that. That's not what his role is going to be. You shouldn't be doing that. Fast forward a few years later, well, you know what derailed Dylan Cousins' career? He took a beating in a fight, and he has never been the same since. And I'm not saying directly that is the reason for it, because he was struggling before that fight, but just there hasn't been a fight since. He hasn't been as physically involved since. I think that altered him. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't want him doing that. That wasn't his role. I get it. You can get feisty and get in there without dropping the gloves. It's somebody else's job. It's not yours. You're my top 6 center. You don't fight people. Somebody else does that. Regardless, I just wrote about him actually yesterday, so I have all the numbers fresh in my head. So it's good timing for the question. Everything you look at from an advanced stat or from a raw production standpoint tell the story of a decline, a 2-year decline. There is nothing trending up. His on-ice offense numbers are down for the worst of his career in some regards. His production is down for the second year in a row. Not even at the 30-goal pace, but even towards even looking at last season, it is down. His role is being reduced. He has lost power play time. He is now in the second power play unit. He does not kill penalties anymore. He's taken off that role. His minutes are starting to go down. He was put on the line with Tage Thompson and Zucker and Peterka at one point. He lost that to Kulich. Now Kulich has jumped him in the pecking order, if you will, and deservedly so. Kulich has looked like a better player. The thing for me, I think that is the most off-putting is his shooting. So his shot attempts are down. He's shooting less. And when he is shooting from poor areas on the ice, low percentage areas. So his individual expected goal is the lowest of its career right now. So he is shooting from poor areas on the ice when he does shoot. Now, last year we could look at it, particularly at 5-on-5, and we could say, well, bad luck. Shot 5%. I think it was like 7 or 8 goals below expected. Bad luck. What are you going to do? At 5-on-5 this year, because we'll exclude power play because he doesn't really get the minutes anymore. We'll just look at straight 5-on-5 because that's what he's asked to do. That's not the case here. His shooting percentage this year was 12% at 5-on-5. That's good. But, again, shooting less, worse locations, goal numbers are going to be down. He's shooting, I think, right at expected or above expected at 5-on-5. So, you can't even say. So, if his power play time is gone, he's not going to get those goals. So, you're sitting there like, well, I have a guy who, for his career, besides 1 year, even going back to juniors, he's not really an above-average finisher. So now I have him shooting basically at what the numbers telling me what he should be at because he won't go to the certain areas on the ice, because he can't get there with the puck, because he keeps fumbling, because he keeps turning it over, he's hesitant. It's so much that I don't think it's salvageable in Buffalo. Do I think that another team couldn't find Dylan Cousins, unlock him, and kind of get him back? I don't think he'll ever be the guy he was a couple years ago. I think that's never happened. He's never going to be a 30-goal, 60-point guy, 70-point guy. That's not who he is. But I think you can get to a 20, 25 goals guy on a deep team that could be my third-line center. Really, I think what we're looking at is somebody should try to get him to make Tim Casey Middlestat what Colorado did. Now, Colorado tried to get him, make him a second-line center, and that failed miserably. And I think they're realizing, okay, maybe he's a third-line center on a good team, an offensive centerman. And I think that's what a team should be looking for. So I think the Sabres should really, and soon, it's just not going to work here. There's no signs of improvement, no signs anywhere to make it better. This is the second coach now. It's not. It's just accept it's not going to work. And try to find what you can. Try to cash in on that value. And if you wait longer and more underwhelming performance builds up, you are going to lose value. I don't think that $7 million cap hit is a problem right now for a lot of teams. But if you wait another season, I think that it will be. And it will make it, again, more difficult. And you might have to eat some of it or, make it a more difficult trade, not get the return you're looking for, you get now. So I think they should be trying very hard to cash in on that value. And to be perfectly honest, I think they're open to it. He almost got traded to Detroit. I think he's been involved in some other conversations too. I don't think the offers are what they want right now. And that's the reason why he's still on this team. But I do think that they are open to it. And from other media insiders, reporters too, that's been the indication that he's definitely out there and some teams are interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate with Dylan Cousins because I really do think, like you said, it is kind of a confidence issue, whether it was that fight or whether it was whatever. But, if it's just on ice stuff, and basically getting your ass kicked, is separate, and that doesn't happen, I think you can kind of fix him here in Buffalo. But once a player loses confidence, and they're just get rid of him at that point, and I don't want to say get rid of him because that sounds like you're throwing him away for a 4th round NHL
Yeah.
pick.
Yeah.
But you get as much value as you possibly can for him, and you bring in whatever you can. Maybe use that piece to go get something a little bit bigger. Maybe use him as a bargaining chip for kind of like we saw with the trade last night is with Carolina and Colorado and Chicago is you kind of use that to include in a Dylan Cousins goes here, we're getting this guy, but you're also getting this guy, and we're giving up all this other stuff, and we're getting one piece back. Whatever has to happen, you get whatever you can for him at this point right now. I really do think that a lot of players on this team are slotted incorrectly. I think Tage Thompson is at best a second line center. I know that he's had that career year, and that was the whole issue a couple years ago when they missed the playoffs by 1 point. That was my whole gripe: is go out and do something to get this team to the playoffs this year, because you don't know what's going to happen next year, and not every year is going to be a career year for a player. He's not going to go out and, he scored 51 this year, now he's going to score 55, and then the next year he's going to score 60. It just doesn't happen. Maybe he gets back to that 50-goal mark, but let's kind of slot everybody into a better position. With that being said, other than Elias Pettersson, is there anybody out there that can slot into that 1C role that would be available?
Not now, no. I'm just trying to think of teams in my head. Just quickly going through. I don't think so. I mean, Pettersson is the only legitimate first-line center that's available. Look, teams don't move first-line centers. I mean, when they have them, they don't move them. And if they do, it's a certain situation like we're seeing with Pettersson for the locker room thing, and that's why he would be available. So, no. Could you find yourself a decent second-line center, and then maybe your team has 3 second-line centers if Kulich develops properly? Look, that's my fear with Kulich. Like, don't repeat Cousins. Like, geez, my throat. I think that he's got tools, and I'm a big Kulich guy. But, like, he should be nowhere but a third-line center next year. He's a third-line offensive center next year. For the love of God, please don't put him in your top 6, throwing out your team next season.
Yes.
But, I mean, if you can go get, a couple decent, you already have Tage, and he's survivable as a first-line center. He's done it for a few years, and he can do it. And then you get a nice second-line center behind him, better than Cousins and what Cousins has given you, and then you have Kulich. And I think, and don't forget McLeod's still here too. Like, so you can start to build a nice center spine as you go. But even that, there's not a lot that are there. I think they tried to get a centerman from Detroit, and that's why that didn't happen. These teams aren't willing to do that. Pittsburgh is, looking to move guys, and Raquel, somebody that I like, but I think he's more of a winger than a center right now, so that doesn't... Don't get me wrong, I would still go get him, but I don't think that helps your center issue. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably something in the offseason that you'd have to go chase, but those moves are not easy. Getting those centers is very hard.
The center from Detroit, was that a no movement guy, or was that somebody who didn't have one?
It was somebody who didn't have one in Detroit, just didn't want to move them at this time. Really, I'll just say that they never got the final piece of the puzzle together to make it happen.
Got it.
Hey.
No, that makes sense. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, Chet, so we've seen, you look at the Sabres prospect pool, and we're kind of missing that 1C, right? You see what's happened with the Sharks this year when Macklin Celebrini was drafted by the Sharks. I mean, it felt like he injected a real life into that franchise, right? And it moves some other, right? I mean, he's been phenomenal. I mean, he's been, the start of his career. Is there anybody?
He's good.
Yeah, I haven't really scouted the 25 draft super hard yet. I've been kind of peeking at it. I know it's a little early for this. And you see anybody out there that could potentially be that guy? I mean, I'm not sure if we've looked at it yet. I mean, I almost cringe at myself. I got to look at the mock drafts again, do the simulator. But here we are. But is there anything that you could see maybe if we do get lucky and get maybe even a top 2 pick or top 3 pick? Is there Is there someone out there that could potentially be that guy that we could slide in maybe even day one or close to it that could be that guy?
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys. So I started to look into it. We had Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff on our podcast actually last week, or this week actually. So I'm starting to try to watch more games because here we are in January. Again, watching Boston College and junior hockey games and stuff like that. Fun world to live in. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys. The funny part and the ironic part is the guy at the top of the draft that is starting to separate himself as the overwhelming first overall pick in a typical Sabres fashion is Matthew Schaefer, who is a left shot defenseman. So, of course, there was another left shot defenseman when the Sabres get the first overall pick. But Matthew Schaefer is very good. Very, very good. I don't want to be put in that predicament, what I would do if they had the first overall pick, because I'll probably lose my mind deciding what I'd want them to do. But let's say they don't. So there's James Hagens from Boston College. He's an American-born player. He is a centerman. He plays, like I said, on that good BC team with Perreault and Ryan Leonard, and that's a really good line for BC. And he had a pretty good World Junior. So that's probably the guy who goes 2 overall, and so that'd be the guy maybe I'd look at. He's a prototypical centerman in the NHL. A little bit smaller at 5'11", but that doesn't really matter in today's NHL. Celebrini's not that big either. As long as you have the muscle. I mean, look at Zach Benson. He's arguably the best forward player in the team, and he's 5'9". So as long as you know how to do that, size doesn't really bother me as much. Beyond that, there's Michael Misa, who is probably the third-ranked guy right now. He's a Canadian player, more likely a winger, maybe center, but more likely a winger in the NHL. And then there's Porter Martone. I forgot who said it. I was listening to. Oh, it was Steve when I was talking to him. He's put him more in the lines of a Matthew Tkachuk style. He's a winger, bigger, more of a physical side, not as flashy, but gets the job done. So those are kind of your guys in your top 4. Victor Eklund, who I like a lot, I think, from what I've seen so far in the World Juniors, and started talking to people out of Sweden. Speaking of the Sharks, that is William Eklund's brother, Victor Eklund.
I was just going to ask.
I like his game a lot, and he's probably in that 5-6 spot right now. And then beyond that, get into some other guys, but at least in the top 5, those are probably your 5 guys as of now. And I think in Bob McKenzie's rankings, those are your 5 guys too. That you're looking at right now if you have a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that, again, we're going to be having a top 5 pick most likely, or top 7 pick, unless something really weird happens, and the Sabres just rattle off the next 20. But
nothing matters. So don't count that out for them. Nothing matters.
The answer's in the room. 20 in a row, no problem.
Yeah, right. You want me to win 11 in a row when we're 15 points out? I'll do it right now.
I mean, I did. As a kid, I did watch a Penguins team that had Patrick Lalime go 17 in a row. So, but no, I'm only a kid. That only happens like once in a lifetime. But in all seriousness, I mean, with this team, we've talked about a lot today. What would you do specifically, besides spending to the cap? Because we clearly see that they're not doing that. Clearly have an internal. What would you do specifically moving into the trade deadline specifically to try and bring something into this team based on the fact that Kevin Adams most likely is going to be here next year?
Shake-up trade. Take, I guess Cousins makes the most sense, and toss him out the door. Shake up your room. Take a prominent player in that room and shake your roster. And, if you want, look for the Middlestat trade you made last year, the Middlestat for Byram. Look for something like that. So shake up your team. Look, this isn't good enough. We're going to miss the playoffs again. This core can't do it. So key piece that's wearing a letter, out the door. And, it sends a message that if you do want to keep playing here, start improving, or we're going to keep firing more people out the door. And see where that takes you, but it's a start. It's a start to send a jolt through your team because there's no jolt. They've done nothing.
what would you try and what would you try and bring back in, like the type of player to bring back in? And would it be more like a hockey trade, or would you try and include multiple pieces in with Dylan Cousins?
It depends on what I'm going to get, the player, the situation. If it's Pettersson, I got to include more pieces. If it's another type of Byron, then maybe I can find a 1-for-1. So I would look at either another top 6 forward, probably a center if I can find one. It's likely going to have to be a youngish one, probably under 24, because if you're just going to do a hockey trade there, or a right shot defenseman. There's not a lot of right shot defensemen that are available, but maybe one shakes free somewhere that you can go find and do that. Or you can get a veteran player if, within reason. I'm not going to go acquire a 33-year-old, but if you can find a 27, 28-year-old that fits your team, then that's something they look into too.
So here's another question too. Does Zucker stay, or do they get like a first or a second for him?
I think he stays. I think they want him. I think he is open to it, and I think it sends a message to their team, and also on the league, that we are going to keep veteran players. We're not. Mm-hmm. We're keeping veterans. We're keeping our own. So I think he ends up staying. I do.
I agree.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, I'm sorry. No, my bad. No, with Cousins, I mean, I think the big piece too, Chad, is are the Sabres willing to maybe take on another contract from that team? Let's say there's a $4 or $5 million guy, right? Maybe for 2 years. Are they willing to absorb that? And that comes back to what you said about, are they willing to spend it, right? Are they willing? Yeah, and that, like, in a normal circumstance, this would be a fairly easy trade if Pagula was willing to spend his cap and get that, that experienced GM and put all those resources into the Sabres. It would be great, right? But that's the problem. They're working with restraints, but they may have to eat $1 million, $1.5 million of that Cousins deal to say, hey, Dylan Cousins at $5.9 million or 5.8, that's way more attractive than 7.1, right? So,
yeah, I don't think they're retaining.
Are they willing to do that?
I don't think they're going to retain. They're not retaining anything.
They're not retaining. So
maybe they take a guy if they like them that has a year or two, and it's maybe at a little bit of a higher salary. I think that can be a possibility, but retaining on Cousins' contract, no, absolutely not.
Do you expect anybody from Pittsburgh to be dealt to the Sabres?
Maybe.
Well, I mean, the only reason I ask is because I know they're looking for because people I know in Pittsburgh, they are looking for that like to not necessarily rebuild, but kind of like what the Bills did and retool, and continue moving forward. And to do that, you got to get already semi-developed pieces, but not veterans. In the NHL, because you're not wanting the unless you're getting the first, second, or third overall pick, you're not getting a player that's most likely going to start day one and be up to full speed. So you want somebody that's like probably 2, 3, 4 years developed, whether it's AHL or NHL. But then you're trying to move like a veteran guy out, right? I mean, would that be more make sense?
Yeah. It's frustrating for me that Marcus Pettersson is left-handed. If he was a right shot, I think that would be a perfect fit, and I would be all over that. But I just don't think that they're going to go with hard on a left-handed defenseman. So he's out of it. I don't think that they're going to move Raquel right now. At least that's some of the reporting out of Pittsburgh is right now they're not really willing to do that. I don't think Brian Rust is waving to come to Buffalo. They're not moving Cosby or Malkin, and then we're going click off the list as we go here. Michael Bunting might be the guy I think have the highest possibility of being somebody that the Sabres would look at. I did hear in the beginning of the year that that's somebody they were looking at. I don't know if they're still interested, but but you're not really giving up a lot for that, to be honest. So that's why I said maybe, because I could see that situation. But I think if you're looking for something that's like, I don't know, Consta Hellenius for something or Cousins for something, I just don't see that match at Pittsburgh. Okay. Unless they want Pettersson. And
that's the thing. And that's the thing. I really don't want to see Cousins traded to Pittsburgh, because that would just be like the icing on the cake as a Sabres fan. and having to live part of my life in Pittsburgh and being a Pittsburgh fan until Crosby came around. It's just like if Cousins were to go there and succeed and see him get a cup before the Sabres are even in the playoffs, I think I don't know. I might be wearing a Penguins jersey at that.
Well, did you see?
Pittsburgh's not very close to winning anything, so I don't think they got a lot of work.
Did you see Paul? You see Paul Bissonnette speculating maybe Crosby to the Avs last night?
Yeah, that was
crazy.
That got shut down pretty quick by the bigger guys, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because I just saw that last night. I was like, that is interesting.
Shut it down, and somebody else did saying like it would be absolutely stunning if he was to be traded. He has a full no move clause. He doesn't want to move. They don't want to move him, so it seems like that was an internet rumor thing that.
Yeah.
Really
so Chad, we really do appreciate you coming on. We are going to switch gears real quick for like 2-3 more minutes while we got you, and talk the most important thing going on this weekend, being tomorrow night 6:30 in Kansas City. What do you have predicted that you see going on for that game in your eyes?
A lot of stress and anxiety and ripping of the couch and up and down emotions. That is what I predict to occur.
Yeah. Now,
I don't know, man. It is a honestly, it's kind of crazy because it's back-to-back weeks now of it, where it is a literal coin flip game. It is two evenly matched teams, 50-50, flip a coin. I mean, if I take my Bills hat off in a 50-50 game, history tells you to go with the Chiefs. If I put my Bills hat back on, history tells me this sure as hell feels like the Bills' year for everything that has gone on. Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't even know. It's everybody's healthy for the most part. Besides Rap, everybody's going to play on both sides, and we're just going to stand in the middle of the ring and just throw haymakers, and we're going to see who's standing at the end of it.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see Kyle Brandt's Rocky video coming out tomorrow. His hype video, his yearly hype video he does during the AFC Championship game. He's actually he put out a picture yesterday of him dressed as Rocky in Rocky 4 with the leather jacket on, climbing a mountain, before he fights Drago. So, but
I'll tell you one thing. This is I lived through all 4 Super Bowls. I mean, I'm old enough to say I was a senior in high school living in the New York area when we lost to the Giants. Yeah, that was – I'm still scoring from that. But I really think tomorrow night is probably the biggest sporting event in Buffalo sports history tomorrow night. I hope people really understand. It's not – obviously the Super Bowl would be bigger and winning that, but tomorrow night, considering who we're playing, considering the fact that they're a dynasty, we're going into the pit of Yeehaw Stadium. It doesn't get any better than this. Like it really, whatever it's called, whatever Arrowhead, whatever it is. I know. But it's just the enormity of this moment for a Buffalo sports fan. I don't know if it's going to get really much better than this ever. Even if we win, because even if we win this game, let's say we win another Super Bowl or 2, this night, tomorrow night, is going to be the night that we're going to talk about 30, 40 years from now. I'm telling you, this is a massive, massive night.
If they win this year and win, like add 1 or 2 more, you're right. This will be the game we look back on. That was the game that catapulted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So, Chad, we do have our trade deadline special coming up. We'll discuss that and see if you can hop on for like 15, 20 minutes for that, because we are going to be doing it the day of the trade deadline. We'll see what's going on there. I know you're a busy person, but we do want to thank you so much for coming on here. And in the meantime, give the people where they can find you.
So I appreciate that, 1. 2, so Expected Buffalo is the site. That's expectedbuffalo.com. We have our podcast, Expected Buffalo. We have a little portfolio we're building over there. So our new thing is the outlet. So if you're looking for something non-Sabres related, is what we try to keep it in that. So the first one we talked about hockey gambling and fantasy hockey was our first one. Like I said, we had Stephen Ellis on this week to talk about the draft in general. So a lot of those podcasts we'll be putting out going forward will kind of give people like it says, an outlet to the rest of the league and something else talking about different things, non-Sabres related, but we'll still have our Sabres stuff. So, so check us out. And then also, if you're a lacrosse fan, Eddie, our lacrosse guy, does a great job covering the Bandits, the league in overall, and the Rochester Nighthawks. So we have that little niche too that we lean into.
Well, definitely have to check out Expected Buffalo. And Brian?
Also, to follow Chad on Twitter, please. There's Chad's handle. So please, if you're a Sabre fan, get on following Chad. Game days, after games, it's a must. So, and Matt?
Good to be seen, guys.
Good to be seen. Thank you so much.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollos, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.